Welcome to Handmade Happenings. I'm Marissa, and when this video comes out, it will be just over a year since I started this YouTube channel, and I could think of no better way to celebrate than by having a tea party with my mom. So I'm going to go through this course by course, starting with the scones. Now, if you're not familiar with scones, they are sort of like a sweet biscuit, oftentimes with fruit in them. Usually that's how I make them, with some kind of fruit, but for this, I wanted something a little more plain. So I tried a new recipe for cream scones, and I will link any recipes that I used in the description. Anyway, so this didn't have any fruit in it. It just used heavy cream and sugar, and I was really surprised by how sweet it actually turned out despite not having anything really added to it. Now, I did serve this with mixed berry jam. I had originally wanted to do a lemon curd, but I had tried to do that the day before, and I tried a new recipe for that, and it was supposed to be eggless, and it didn't set up at all. I didn't cook it long enough, so I just went with the jam instead. Up next is soup. So I filmed this video in July, and it's a very good time to do this because it meant I had lots of fresh vegetables that I could use because we had them coming in from the garden. So for the soup, I chose to do tomato basil because it's easy and Mom and I both like it, and we had lots of tomatoes. Anytime I do tomato basil soup, I don't really follow a recipe. I just take diced tomatoes and put them in a saucepan and then add some seasoning. In this case, I know I did basil, Italian seasoning. I may have done onion and garlic powder. I may have forgotten that. Salt, pepper. It doesn't really, to me, matter much what I do as long as I get enough seasoning in there so that I'm not just eating tomatoes. So put all that in there, kind of let it come up to a simmer, and then I removed it from the heat and pureed it with an immersion blender. Now, because I had a larger pan, this didn't do much this time. I still had some chunks. I didn't have like a really smooth tomato soup, but that's okay because sometimes I actually like having a little more texture in my soup. And then I put it back on the heat to simmer some more. Anytime it's not like fully thickening, I will just do up a cornstarch slowly to thicken it. Up next was the tea sandwiches. So I wanted 4 different types of sandwiches, so I took out 4 slices of bread, removed the crust from them, and cut them in half. This gave me 4 half sandwiches so that I could make each of my 4 varieties and then cut them in half for the individual plates. So the first sandwich I did was chicken salad, and we actually had chicken salad on the menu for dinner the next night. So we already had chicken cooked. I just pulled some from it, diced it, added some mayo and lemon juice, some raisins and almonds. And this did not turn out as well as it should have. Working in that small of an amount just didn't turn out well. The second sandwich that I did was egg salad. So I just peeled a hard-boiled egg, mashed it up, added some mayo and salt and pepper, and mixed it all together. Sandwich number 3 was a cucumber sandwich. So I peeled and sliced a small cucumber and put some butter on the bread, followed by the cucumbers, and then put on some of a spice blend. I don't remember what it's called. It comes from this place called Spice and Tea, and it's one of their blends that kind of has a very full taste to it. So I just added that on top for the cucumber sandwiches. And then lastly, tomato sandwiches, and I just did a tomato, slices some basil, and some mozzarella cheese. And now for dessert. Ideally, I would have loved to have done similar to the tea sandwiches with just, 2 or 3 or 4 little miniature desserts. Unfortunately, unlike with the sandwiches where there's overlapping ingredients, so you're just slicing a certain amount needed for this tiny sandwich, it's not that easy with desserts. So like if I wanted a cookie, a cupcake or mini cake, and then like a macaron or something, I would have to make much larger batches of cookies, mini cakes, and macarons. And that's just not practical, especially not when you're only feeding 2 people, even if you assume a few leftovers for dessert that evening or something like that. So instead, I chose to make mini chocolate cakes in ramekins. This was a new recipe for me also, but I have done a couple other small cake recipes from the site, so I was fairly confident it would turn out alright. I started out by mixing up the dry ingredients, and then I had to dump those into another bowl because it dawned on me that the dry ingredients always get added to the wet ingredients, and I needed everything in the bowl that I had started with because it had a pouring spout. So then I mixed together the wet ingredients, added the dry to the wet, mixed it together, and poured it into the ramekins before placing them on a cookie sheet and into the oven to bake. Now for the icing, the recipe was a little less specific. It gave the specific measurements for the dry ingredients and then basically just said to add milk as needed to reach a pouring consistency. So that's what I did, but I think I actually added too much milk because it was very runny, and when I went to pour it over the cakes after they had dried, it ended up running out and I ended up having to place the ramekins onto little dessert plates in order to keep from making too big of a mess. And then it was just time to pour the tea and assemble the plates.